Hello, everybody. Welcome to a break in the storms. I am Bill Farrell, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm here today wearing the hat of the Interim Executive Director of Nantucket Arts Council, which has been one of the 3 or 4 groups intimately involved in putting this visit by Anita Walker, who's the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Cultural Council, putting together this visit by her to our island. We had a great lunch today. We had leaders in the nonprofit arts and cultural community specifically who met for lunch and talked with Anita about the work she does at the Mass Cultural Council and how the island might benefit from that. We specifically are interested in a program of the Massachusetts Cultural Council called Cultural Districts. And Anita will explain to you when she's up here what that is and what that entails and how we might benefit from it. One thing I want to stress is that we want to come away from these sessions today with an action plan and with things in place to keep the wheels turning on this. There are a lot of potential benefits to us having a cultural district and us working more with the Massachusetts Cultural Commission, and more specifically, us all working together as arts and cultural groups on Nantucket. So, before you leave today, Cecil Barron-Jensen from the Artists Association of Nantucket is at the back of the room, and she's got a pad, and if you're ready to commit yourself to one more committee, one more group to work with on Nantucket, which we hope many of you will be, please leave your name and contact information with Cecil. I'm sure she's asking for phone numbers and emails. I want to do my duty by thanking the people who put this together today. I mentioned Cecil Barron-Jensen from the Artists Association of Nantucket, and then Remain Nantucket has been instrumental in putting together the support system to make this happen, arranging the spaces, Verna Gonzalez, Rachel Hobart, Melissa Philbrook in particular. And then the Nantucket Historic Association was very generous enough to provide Anita with a lovely place to stay at 99 Main Street and a ghostly companion for the weekend as well. She's been here since Friday, so she's gotten to take in a lot of the island. She's done more than I've done in one weekend in probably all of my 25 years here. So I know she's had a good time. But this also was instigated several years ago by a town official, that being Andrew Vorse, who's the EDNEPDCTON, who's the director of the Nantucket Economic Planning and Development Commission for the town of Nantucket. And working with him on this project has been Kate Hamilton, who of course is Director of Visitor Services. So I'm going to quickly turn this over. By the way, I should say about one more thing about Kate, is that she gets this, about Anita. She gets this. She's been, before she came to Massachusetts to be the director of the Cultural Council, she was in the state of Iowa and was the head of several groups to do with arts, historic preservation, and culture. And she can tell you a little bit about that if it's relevant as the night goes on. We'll be here about an hour and a half, and then there should be time afterwards for schmoozing. There's food and drink in the back, and we can talk amongst ourselves. But I'd like to introduce Andrew Vorse, and he'll tell you what his thinking is behind some of this, and then Anita will come up and share her thoughts with you. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Bill. I always like to follow Bill. He covered all the points, so I'll just be very brief, and we really want to talk to you, Anita. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, I think the cultural district idea is a perfect fit for Nantucket. When I saw some of the list of the communities, I thought that's our group, that's where we need to be. That's our peer group. So, and I think through our visitor services and through the Arts Association, through all the work that we already do, I think we're a natural. So I'm just going to turn it right over to you. You can talk to me anytime, but we're here to talk to you. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I can't tell you how excited I am to see so many people in the room. You know, it's getting dark outside and it's kind of cold, and I thought, I don't know, if it were me, that warm armchair by the fire might be feeling pretty good right about now. We currently have 27 state-designated cultural districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I've had the opportunity to visit all of them. both at the beginning end of their contemplation and when they were finally certified. And there are certain things that, to me, are barometers of success. And I'm looking at one right now. I'm looking at community-wide enthusiasm, people willing to take time out of their busy day to come together to have a conversation about the future of their community. We had a similar-sized group at noontime today to talk about the cultural district, and I was saying to Cecil, I don't know, do you think anybody's going to come tonight? Didn't they all come at noon? And here you all are, all new and all different faces. So first of all, I'm so pleased to see that you've taken this time, and it's really invigorating for me. We're here to talk about the cultural district, but I've had the chance to spend a couple of days here in Nantucket, and I've been here probably half a dozen or so times before, but usually just with one purpose in mind and not to really immerse myself in the community and go on the Christmas stroll and eat all over the place and have as much fun as I have the last couple of days. But there's something that I've noticed that I want to address right up front before we get to talking about the cultural district, and that is you have an enormous number of cultural assets in this community that are not taking advantage of the resources that we have at the Massachusetts Cultural Council. So I want to tell you about some of them, and I'm hoping that I'll be hearing from you not just about the cultural district, but about some of the opportunities beyond that that we have to offer you. First of all, the Massachusetts Cultural Council is a state agency. We are supported by your tax dollars. We have a budget of about $12 million, plus we get about another $1 million from the National Endowment for the Arts, and we fund the arts, sciences, and humanities. Our largest program is to provide, and this is an applause line everywhere I go, unrestricted operating support. Yay! You may clap. To 400 cultural nonprofits in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So if you are associated with, or you know, or you love a cultural nonprofit here on Nantucket, you should find out if they are taking advantage of our cultural investment portfolio program through which we provide unrestricted operating support. We are just about the only source for that, for cultural nonprofits. It's the most difficult dollar to raise. Those of you who have a connection with cultural organizations know that it's one thing to raise money for a concert or an exhibition or an educational outreach program, but for some reason, donors just don't get that same warm, fuzzy feeling to pay your utility bill or the salaries of your staff or health insurance costs or to sweep the snow off the sidewalk. And we know that all that work has to happen before you can do the amazing programming that you do. And that's the power of our cultural investment portfolio. Our second largest program is our local cultural council. And you have one here in Nantucket. I think you have members here in the room. Yes, thank you for coming. Massachusetts Cultural Council funds 329 local cultural councils. There is not a square inch of Massachusetts that is not covered by a local cultural council. And as you know, they provide grants for a lot of the amazing cultural activities that you have in this community. Educational funding. We have a number of programs that support educational efforts in your community. We have the STARS program that puts artists, scientists, humanists, since we cover the broad range, into schools. Up to $5,000, no match required, to help teachers have access to teaching artists, scientists, and so forth to enrich the curriculum in their schools. We have the Big Yellow School Bus program. Lots of times kids have to get on a bus to take advantage of the cultural offerings that you have. Quick and easy application, teacher fills it out, $200 to help support the bus ride for the kids. We send 60,000 kids a year on school field trips who wouldn't have a chance to go to a museum, to come to a place like this without the benefit of that program. So that's another one to take advantage of. I had a chance to talk to people in this community who are doing amazing work with young people, particularly vulnerable young people. We have a program that is a national leader called Youth Reach. It's 20 years old, and it specifically funds cultural organizations that are working with vulnerable youth. get in touch with us if you have an organization that is working in that arena, because we actually have funding to help you do that. We just launched a brand new program called SER, which is modeled on Venezuela's El Sistema program to support music education for children of all ages, sustained continuous music education. More funding available to you. Another program that could be useful to you as you think about developing a cultural district is the Adams Grant Program. This one has also been around but for close to 20 years, but we provide operating funding for partnerships to explore and put into place arts programming that is a stimulus to economic development in the community. We need to get some more of this money here in Nantucket, don't you think, Andrew? I see he's making a list here. And then in addition to this, we also are one of the few state agencies in America that funds individual artists. We provide artist fellowship in all the disciplines, $10,000, flat fellowships, not for a project, but for artists to deepen their work and to use as they see fit. Again, these are competitive programs, but it's essential funding, and I think you should be taking advantage of it. So go on our website and take a look at the offerings that we have at the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and please apply. And if you are associated with an organization that you think might benefit, send me an email, give me a call. Let's get you involved in some of the programs we have at the Mass Cultural Council. Finally, one of our big one is an investment in cultural infrastructure, and I know you have at least 2 organizations that are applying for a Cultural Facilities Fund grant. And Dreamland, for example, has been a recipient in the past. Again, this is critical funding for bricks and mortar capital projects, but we also fund planning. And another one of the little elements that might be of interest to some of the organizations here is we fund what's called system replacement plans. We'll provide, and it's virtually automatic if you apply, funding so that you can bring in a consultant that will lay out the future of the money that you're going to need. When is the roof going to go? When are you going to need to replace the HVAC system? When are you going to, need to replace the water and the plumbing and so forth, so that you can plan and make sure you have the funds you need when those problems present themselves to you. And that is also available through the Cultural Facilities Fund. So I hadn't intended to talk about that, but as I've been getting acquainted with so many of you, and I keep saying, well, are you in our program? Well, have you come to us for money? Do we have money in this? And hearing no, we got to change that to yes. So a brief commercial at the beginning. Please look up the Mass Cultural Council, Google it, and find out about some of the programs and services that, in addition to the Cultural District program. But we are here to talk about the Cultural District program, and I'm absolutely thrilled. This is a program that we thought about and started to put together. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago when we started ruminating on this idea. And when we were thinking about what is a cultural district, one of the ways you think about that is you think about places that look like a cultural district. I thought about Nantucket. It looks like a cultural district. So what is a cultural district? A cultural district is a compact, mixed-use, walkable part of a community. It is built on what we call a sense of place. It's where a community looks at and thinks about what is real and special and authentic about your place. I'm going to ask you to think now to yourself, and then later, hopefully, we'll have a little more of a conversation. What is Nantucket? What's real about Nantucket? What's special about Nantucket? What distinguishes this community from any other? There are no 2 cultural districts alike in our portfolio of 27, because each and every one of these communities has had to look at themselves, think about their history, think about where they came from, think about what's unique in terms of their topography, of their built infrastructure, in terms of their story, their narrative, their history, what's happening now, who lives here, what do people do here. So it's a sense of place initiative. So that's where it starts, first and foremost. What is real and special about this place? Walkable. What does that mean? Well, the first simple thing it means is when you get to the district and you park your car, if you can find a space, you don't have to move it. So you can navigate the whole district without having to then go get in the car and drive to another component of it. We have identified 5 things that make a successful cultural district. The first thing to think about is Cultural districts are driven by partnership and collaboration. It's a group of people who believe in the vitality and the uniqueness of their community, and they want to be the people who are moving it forward. So vital, collaborative partnerships are really the foundation of a successful cultural district. We had a chance, again, at noontime today to meet with a lot of different representatives of organizations, cultural organizations, and, by the way, business organizations. So because we call it a cultural district, please don't think that cultural districts are only made and driven by nonprofit cultural organizations and artists. Cultural districts are truly mixed-use districts in a community that contain for-profit businesses as well as the nonprofit sector. So these partnerships should be inclusive of all of the above. The second thing we look at in a cultural district is the map, the cartography. What is within the boundaries of your district? What is the built infrastructure? And so we ask our communities to do an inventory. What are the assets? What do you have within the district? What are the historic buildings? What are the shops and stores and restaurants? What's there and what's missing? What do you wish was located in the district? The third piece that we look at is programming. A bunch of buildings without an experience isn't much of a cultural district. So you need to activate the district with activities like the Christmas stroll as one good example that I got to experience just this weekend. But it's an intentional plan of programming so that when the visitors come, they have an experience that they can take home with them. And I should mention this at this point. Cultural districts are for visitors, but first, they're for the people who live here. A good place to live is a good place to visit. So as a community thinks about and invests in a cultural district, they should be thinking first and foremost, what is going to be for them? What is it going to be for you, those of you who live in here in Nantucket? And then how do we attract and create a good experience and be a welcoming place for visitors? So we talked about partnership. We talked about maps and inventories. We talked about creating an experience. Then you have to tell people about it. That's a marketing plan. So our cultural districts all have a very intentional and well-defined marketing plan. And then the last thing is governance. There needs to be somebody in charge, somebody who's taking the lead to bring the partners together to make sure that they move the planning process forward. Probably, in my experience of the last 27 cultural districts that we've had an opportunity to certify, and I should mention what some of them are so you get a sense. They're all different. They're all special in their own way. They're everything from Rockport to Lynn to Essex to Gloucester to Rocky Neck to Williamstown, Concord. There's several here in the Cape and Islands area. Vineyard Haven is one of our newest cultural districts, but we just added Plymouth. We have Orleans, Barnstable, Sandwich, and then we have a lot in the middle of the state. We have Northampton, East Hampton. So you can see there are cities and towns of various sizes. We have 2 districts in Boston. In fact, Boston just recently received designation for the nation's first literary district. So when I talk about sense of place, there were people in Boston who were really interested in promoting and recognizing the deep literary heritage that we have in the city of Boston that, quite frankly, had been invisible to a lot of people until it was really elevated through the work of the Cultural District. Did you know that Charles Dickens did his first reading of A Christmas Carol at the Omni Parker Hotel? It wasn't the Omni then. Did you know that? I didn't know that until we did the Cultural District. So that's a perfect example of a district is a way to sort of elevate and shine the light on your own special history that some of you may know or some of you may have forgotten, but a lot of people never even knew happened. It's a way to really celebrate what's real and special about your sense of place. So at this point, I want to kind of make this a little bit more of a conversation. I guess before we get into a little more back and forth, I should tell you, so what is the process? What has to happen? What do we do from here if you're interested in having a cultural district? The first thing is really to build a partnership, and part of that activity really started at noon today as a lot of people who are interested in partnerships came together. And by the way, at that meeting, everybody was asked to sign up on a piece of paper if they were willing to actually do some work and roll up their sleeves and help make this happen. How many sheets? I mean, it's like half the pad is filled with names of people who were interested in coming to the table around that. But it has to be more than just what I call the usual suspects, you know, the standard organizations who are usually at the table around cultural things. So the fact that you are all here this afternoon, I think really speaks loudly to your interest in how you can move an agenda forward around a cultural district here in Nantucket. One of the things that we ask our districts to do is to think about why do you want to be a district and what do you want to accomplish through your district. It's different in every community. So for example, Rockport. Anybody been to Rockport? Wonderful little seaside community. It's got motif number 1, the red shed with the buoys hanging on that's been painted by virtually everybody under the sun. The new Shaylin Liu performance space, which is spectacular. It's got 40 artist galleries. It's compact. It stretches from along Main Street up to Bear Neck, and it's just this beautiful little compact cultural district. What in the world could they possibly need beyond that? Someplace to eat. There's no restaurants. Here they've built the Shaylin Liu. They have programming almost 365 days a year, but they don't have any white tablecloth restaurants and they don't have any place to eat after 5. So one of the goals that they put forth as one of the reasons to develop the cultural district is to attract a restaurant so that when people come to the concert, they actually can stay in Rockport and have a nice dinner. For other communities, it might be we want to attract more visitors. In other communities, it might be we want to actually build a stronger sense of community. At noontime today, I talked about Gloucester, which has historically had a real division between the artist community and the working harbor, the fishermen. There was kind of an us against them mentality. So they actually intentionally developed a district that embraced both the artist and the working waterfront and the fishermen. So they all had to come together to create this district. And as a result, they have accomplished a new harmony in the community that had never existed before. One of the most powerful parts of this program, and I guess I forgot to mention, but full disclosure, we have no money in it. You won't get a grant. You'll get a designation and the opportunity to buy signage. Well, you're smiling. No one left the room. We're working with the legislature to, we actually started this program right after the last major recession, and you couldn't get in to see a legislator if you wanted money. So the only way I could get in the door of a legislator's office was to say, it's revenue neutral. I don't want any money yet. But now that we have, actually, this is the perfect creativity before capital story. Now we have 27 districts, and believe it or not, legislators are coming to me saying, you know, we got to put some money in that cultural district program. Everybody's excited about it. It's doing really good things. So we're looking at a few options. We're looking at outright grants for our district, marketing money for our district, and one idea that we've want to steal from Rhode Island, Louisiana, is the possibility of sales tax exemptions for cultural products that are sold within districts. That has a lot of enthusiasm within our district community. So there seems to be some interest at the State House this year to be able to move some of these tools forward. So, but right now, there's no money. But the power of it has really been, as I've watched these 27 districts come into being, is in every community, and I'm sure it's true here in Nantucket as well, there are a lot of people kind of doing their own things in their own little pockets, all with a similar interest, all with a similar goal in mind, but they're operating in isolation. And what the district does is it gives them a platform and a framework to work together and to advance an agenda moving forward together and to work collaboratively. When we were at lunch today, I don't know how many organizations were represented. Quite a few, probably 20 or so. And I said, when's the last time you all got together to meet and plan together? how many times have you done that? And the answer was none. So just think of the possibilities of collaborative planning around events and when they're held, collaborative marketing opportunities where everybody throws in together to create a unified marketing plan, brand building around Nantucket and having a similar look and feel to the brand of Nantucket. There are so many ways that our organizations can work together. I was sharing just recently when we had a cup of coffee, Boston and the Berkshires both have a program called the Big List, where all the cultural nonprofits put their lists together and share their fundraising lists. That sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? But you know what? They love it. Because now, if, for example, out in the Berkshires, Jacob's Pillow looks at the list and they see that their audience also tends to go to Tanglewood, or if I'm Barrington Stage and I see my audience also tends to go to Williamstown Theater Festival, then I can target those people that I'm not getting, because they're likely to have an interest in my organization, since they also have other people with an interest in that org. So there's so many things you can do when you start sharing. It actually makes the pie bigger. And we found that that's what's happening. We have districts where the organizations have come together to create an app collectively. You don't want everybody here to make an app. You want one app for the visitors so that they can use it to find their way around Nantucket. Or we have that also on the Cape happening. So it's the opportunity for collaboration within the context of a district that has really made it successful. A few other things about our cultural districts. Communities can have more than one. So, for example, we have one on Martha's Vineyard. They're looking at one in Edgartown. We're looking at one in Oak Bluff. And I think actually the next one after Vineyard Haven is going to be out by Gayhead with the Native American Cultural Center there. So it's not a sort of an in and out prospect. There are many opportunities. It's about looking about what the sense of place is, what's real, and what's special, and what's the story and narrative that you want to tell. The other thing I would mention is one of the processes that takes place is you do have to sort of draw a map around the district. And oftentimes communities feel like, well, who's in and who's out, and we get these maps that have these octopus legs as they try to grab this organization that's way over there or this one that's over here. You still want to have a compact, walkable district. But organizations that are important in the community and real assets can still be partners in the district without being physically located within the district. So it all starts with community members coming together around an idea, around a sense of place, and an enthusiasm of how you can advance your community. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish with the cultural district? What can that do for Nantucket? And then creating measurable benchmarks to move forward toward those goals. It's all about collaboration and bringing the parties together in the community. And please think it's not just the cultural organizations doing this on your behalf. There's a place for everybody at the table, whether it's a business person, the Chamber of Commerce, it could be the preservation organizations, all coming together to think collectively and collaboratively about what is Nantucket and how we can create a district that really tells the world how special this place really, really is. With that, I want to come down off this stage because it's too far away from you. And really maybe we can have a more of a conversation about how you feel about the idea of a cultural district. What do you think it would look like? What could your role be in it? And what could it accomplish for you? So I'm going to... But first, I want to start with this question. What is Nantucket? What is real and special about Nantucket? How would you describe Nantucket to somebody who just landed here from another planet? I'm going to go over here to somebody I know. Oh, good.
Nantucket to me is an idyllic place to live, to visit, to frequent as often as possible or to live here full-time, as my wife and I do now. We've been to many places all around the world, and a lot of these places are really filled with beauty. And we come back to Nantucket, and the comparison is that Nantucket has all the beauty that you can see in the world. There are places that are still hidden in Nantucket that you can see, where you can isolate yourself, or where you can join in communities and really enjoy life. And Nantucket is what you want to make of it. I retired at age 70, which was 5 years ago, and I am as busy here now as I ever was when I was working 80 hours a week. And there's anything you want to do, you can do here in Nantucket. And you get a sense of community in any organization. I happen to belong to the Artists Association of Nantucket, and I've sort of made that a full-time job. And and it's really a thrill to be a part of it. It's a thrill for me, coming from the business community, to be a part of the art community. And I had a certain reputation in the business world, and I thought I lost my identity when I left it. But it's interesting to be able to create a new identity in some other field. And there is so much more that can be done in the art community here. There are collaborations that we want to do through the Art Association of Nantucket with other organizations. We're already in the midst of planning some of those things. There are some other ideas that are yet to be fully formulated that will be coming forward. And there's so much history in Nantucket. The NHA has built a brand on the whaling history of Nantucket, the whaling industry that started in America in Nantucket. Well, there's another history that Nantucket has as well, and that is the development of the art community, which really started in the 50s. But there were artists here well before that. So the Artists Association can build, and the Arts Council can build a brand just on the history of the art community in Nantucket. And we have a permanent collection at the Art Association. Well, there's a perfect place for that's part of the history of Nantucket. And there are so many exciting things that you can get involved in Nantucket. It doesn't have to be part of the art community. It can be anything. The churches here are filled with people that go, some part-time, some full-time. And there's so many activities. And you use the word Nantucket as a community. Well, that's what it is. It is a community. How many towns do you go into and you don't know where you're going from one town to the next because they're all connected with strip malls? Well, you don't have that here in Nantucket. And it is a community from one side of the island to the other side of the island. And as you can tell from my enthusiasm, it is a damn exciting place to be.
You are great. I think they have that all on camera. All right, so I'm going to come right over here to you, Bill, because you're the historic voice on this.
Well, I mean, history is everything we do on Nantucket. Our place shivers with history here. We're about that. But, to start with what Nantucket is, to start with Melville, it's a real corner of the world. It's a great line that he used before he even visited Nantucket. But I love it because what we do here is real. I love it because if a person understands Nantucket, they go a long way towards understanding America. And it's a microcosm of America. So, and to pick up on your point, it is a place where people, like in America itself, can become reinvented. And I think that's what's so exciting about it.
Thank you. I'm remembering now, because we talk a lot about identity and sense of place, and the fact that you found a new identity in this whole concept of sense of place. I think that's really powerful. Who else wants to talk a little bit about what Nantucket is?
I picture Nantucket as a beautiful place geology-wise, people-wise, history-wise, that went to sleep, and that sleep, and was a sleep of poverty, made this place preserved with enough time so that others discovered it, and in discovering it, took action to resist the pressures that many other towns have caused it to disappear. And it hasn't here. Unfortunately, we still have people that allow it to stay that way. It looks like maybe this can help it along.
I live in Europe, and I spend 4 months a year here, and I started coming here when I was 11. So I'm extremely enthusiastic about Nantucket, and whenever I get ready to come here, I change somehow. And my friends over there say, well, where are you going, and what are you doing, and why is it so important? And I say, well, you know, how do you explain Nantucket to somebody who's maybe even never been to the United States? So I say, well, basically, it's a piece of living history where you can walk down the streets and feel and see what was going on 150 years ago in a pristine environment that's been preserved over 50% by forward-thinking people who love the island and who love what it has to offer. And it's also a vibrant cultural community, a vibrant social community, a vibrant gourmet community. And what's wrong with that picture?
Other thoughts on what Nantucket is to you? Yeah, let me run around.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention architecture. I mean, Nantucket, unlike any other location in the United States, has over 800 federal period houses and buildings built before 1850 that are in use and have been in use for up to 200 years. And it makes our sense of place very physical, very definable, and quite unique.
I would add to a lot of these comments that it's also an incredibly beautiful natural environment on this island with the clearest skies over where you can see the stars on the whole East Coast, and great scientific work has been done on this island by Mariah Mitchell and other people who developed the technology that the whalers could use to navigate or to help navigate in their star charts and other things like that. So we have a scientific, not just astronomical, but a very clean water and shellfish and things like that that are unique. There are very few places left that have Nantucket Bay scallops and things like that. So, so I would say that the natural world and the science, and we have represent the Mariah Mitchell organization on the island. We have an aquarium and a planetarium, and an observatory to look at the skies and understand the fish that migrate here, et cetera. So, and we also would like to thank the Mass Cultural Facilities Organization for giving us a grant to do our planning.
Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Nantucket's also a place of great diversity. You wouldn't guess it looking around the room because we all have very similar colored skin. But it really is an island full of people from all around the world, in many languages, many different cultures. We have also a tremendous range of diversity in our economic status. We have, I think, in a smaller area, probably more economic differences than places other than a really big city. You can get people who have more money than a lot of us could ever conceive of, and people who are overstaffing their houses with so many people. So one of the things I'm always struck by is just our range, our huge range of, and how easy it is to just live in your own corner of the island, not geographically, but in terms of who you interact with and how. So we have all these possibilities of sort of mixing layers you don't get to mix other places.
As my neighbor to the left just mentioned,
We've talked a lot about what Nantucket has, the things that Nantucket has. And I was waiting for the first person to talk about people, because people aren't things. Our community is one of the things that I think stands us apart. I've lived in a lot of different places, and I've lived here a long time. I've raised a family here. Our community is like no other. Our schools, our friends, the people that we surround ourselves with, the people that we know and the people that we don't know. I think that's key. I had something happen to me today that was just astounding. It would have happened in the 1950s. I didn't think that it could happen here in Nantucket. In my haste to get all my mail out, I handed it to my letter carrier in the rain on Saturday so I could head out to the stroll. And in my haste to do so, I realized that my Comcast bill, which I take to Monomoy Road like a lot of other people do, didn't have a stamp on it. It was just in an envelope, and it wasn't even sealed, and it had the check inside of it. And I handed it to Tony, and off it went. And I went down to see Amy at the post office today, and I said, gee, what should I do about this? And she said, well, we'll see how it turns out. I happened to see Tony today just before I came here, and I started to explain what I had done, and he said, Charles, I already put it in your mailbox. That happens here because a lot of us, as I look around the room, a lot of us know one another. We care about one another. This is a community, and a lot of that is gone in America, and that's the thing that I'm most grateful for here.
One of the things about Nantucket is it's a destination. It's a place that you cannot pass through. When you're here, you're really aware that you're here. And there aren't that many places in the world that keep you continually aware that you're in the place that you're in.
Thank you. Good point.
Nantucket to me is magical. I think it is a place of opportunity. And that is with anything that you want to do, whether it's starting over and having a totally different life than you would have had anywhere else, or just starting a club that maybe you never wanted to start before. Anything. The support here is overwhelming. And the just richness of atmosphere here. It's in the cobblestones, it's in the lampposts, it's in the old wood in the houses, it's in the moors, it's everywhere. No matter where you look, it's 100% unique, this place. It's very unlike anywhere else.
Anyone else want to comment? So you've talked about really the range of the people, the sense of community, the built infrastructure, the architecture, the art, the sciences, the humanities, the humanity of this place, the geography, the natural beauty. You've captured a lot in your comments about Nantucket, and what you've really delivered is a genuine and authentic love of this place. So my next question for you is, from what you understand so far about what a cultural district is, what do you think a cultural district could do for Nantucket? What would you want to be the goals of the cultural district?
I think that it is a great idea to have a cultural district here because besides the economic gain immediately, for the people involved and the businesses overall, it's creating a wonderful foundation to build on for the generations that are coming and growing. And right now, being a young person in Nantucket, I do see a lot of social division. There are a lot of people in high school and around my age in their 20s that they don't go out, they don't do anything. They don't even go to band practice, really, because it's winter, it's cold, there's nothing to do. So I would really love for more clubs to happen, more funding to get poured into programs for the youth of this island. I think that's very important.
Your comment emphasizes something that really hope that we don't lose sight of. It's not just serving visitors. It's first and foremost serving the people who live here. So when we talk about activating the district and programming and the experience in the district, the very types of things that you were just describing, activities for the young people who live here to participate, perhaps during the times of the year when visitors aren't even coming, would be a really great goal of a cultural district. Other ideas of the goals of the cultural district, or what you'd like to see it accomplish, or what could it accomplish for Nantucket?
Anita, I think, I mean, the fact is we all realize we already have a cultural district. The whole island is a National Historic Landmark. So on first glance, this can seem a bit of a redundant exercise. But I have to say, having been part of lunch today and part of that exciting discussion with cultural partners, what I see in this is, Shakespeare once said, things one are done, joy's soul lies in doing. And what I like about this whole process is that it brings us all together, and it helps us recognize what we have in front of us. It helps us coordinate. It helps us, for the sake of the visitor, provide an extraordinary experience. Not that they don't get one now, but it will be more coordinated. So I thrill at the notion of having a dialogue more so than we've had ever with cultural partners on the island. So I think that's what I see in this.
Other, goals, good.
There are probably 150 organizations that go out and try to raise funds every year for various different causes. And it's a competitive kind of a situation. And one of the things that I see with a cultural district is probably a little bit more of a cooperative effort and collaboration in a lot of different directions. And that you'll still have the competition for fundraising, but there's going to be more of a collaborative effort towards what these organizations do together. And that means that the funds that one organization has will also benefit the growth of another organization. And I think that's a very positive aspect to what we have here, or can have here, with the cultural designation. And not only will that be broadcast or marketed to beyond Nantucket, but also with Nantucket, and will further promote the capabilities of what any one organization can do. There have been some collaborative efforts, but I think there are going to be a lot more once we have that cultural designation. And actually, that has to be part of the requirement. And that's going to promote it, it's going to force it a bit, and it's going to enable every organization, as I said, to grow even beyond what they're trying to do now. And that's an exciting aspect to it that is inherent just on Nantucket, which will then have the benefit because that will spread the word and the reputation of what Nantucket is to the outside world. And that has nothing but positive aspects to it.
Hi, I've been here for about 50 years. For that, I lived in Manhattan for the first 25. Having raised 6 children here, all of whom had to go off island to go to college at vast expense, it has always been my interest in seeing whether or not Cape Cod Community College would somehow have a permanent presence on the island, because you can take virtual classrooms from now till doomsday. It does not give you the interaction with other people from other places. While being here for 2 years would give you the head start and not the bill for going to college on the mainland, you could then take that 2 years and get into any college in the state system of colleges and universities, and then go be an engineer at Lowell or be whatever at Westfield State, do the art program, whatever. But that first 2 years is a killer. I had 3 children in college for 5 years in a row. Believe me, I know about vast expense. All right. I think Cape Cod Community College, or whoever, should have a constant presence to get kids going.
You know, that reminded me, slight digression off Nantucket, but I think Bill mentioned I moved here from Iowa, And when I was in Iowa, I had the same job, the State Department of Cultural Affairs, and I started this program called Iowa Great Places. Now, I know some of you think that's an oxymoron, but Iowa does have great places. But the whole idea of it was, and it's actually part of the thinking around cultural districts as well, but the idea around Iowa Great Places was that instead of sort of spreading all these different state resources in a thin layer like peanut butter across the whole state, where it wasn't really enough to accomplish anything, only enough to add frustration and make people work hard and then get exhausted because you really didn't have enough resources, that we would actually pick 3 places a year, and then all of the state agencies would come together. And for that year, we would focus all of our resources on that. So the governor liked the idea, and we did it. And one of the communities was Sioux City, Iowa. And Sioux City, Iowa did not have a state university. And just like you, they said, you know, if only we could have a university here. They also said, if only we could move the interstate highway, which is blocking our view of the Missouri River. They did both under Iowa Great Places. Iowa State University opened a branch of its architectural college in Sioux City because they have the greatest collection of terracotta architecture in the country. And the Department of Transportation moved the highway. So that's an example of what focus and collective thinking can do. And don't be afraid to dream big about what you can accomplish when everybody gets together. Who else has an idea of what you'd like to see accomplished with a cultural district?
I know how great it can be for the community here, but I think when you have a designation, such as would happen with the cultural district, it also is an opportunity to focus the 40,000 plus people who appear here in the summertime and have them think about this place as more than beautiful beaches and great places to shop and eat. And I know many people do appreciate all of the other things that we talked about, but designations like that are very important to focus people's ideas about what they are feeling about the place that they're visiting. So I think it would really enrich the 50,000 people that are here. I'm not quite sure of the, the influx numbers, but it's a lot. Yeah. And I'd like them to think more about the deep fabric of this community beyond the beauty and the beaches and the shopping.
Other ideas?
I would love to see a cultural district make the diversity that we have on this island be more visible. In other words, there should be a lot broader group in this room. And I think it lacks a dialogue. And the fact of the matter is we have a large population of Asians, we have a large population of Hispanics, and there's not a lot of crossover. So maybe a cultural district could help break down some of those silos.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Definitely. I think you can see it sometimes when you go, if you have any connection with the public schools, and you go into the elementary school, at least when we came here in 2002, and you talk about Wales, or you talk about Mariah Mitchell, whatever, and there's a blank on the faces of intelligent children who don't come from this part of the world, and they haven't a clue. And maybe this designation and how it would work would affect their families as well. And I think that's really, really important.
I think the NHA Diversity Day was amazing that way, so congratulations. We attended one part of the afternoon and looked at some of the videos that they had done, the oral histories or oral commentary on families that have come here and how they feel about Nantucket from all over the world, really, but primarily, I think, South America and Latin America. And it's amazing how they feel about Nantucket. And it really was heartwarming to hear them say that, because I often think they're very hidden. During the tourist season, you rarely see anyone that isn't in the service industry from our diverse populations in a normal everyday walk. And you lose sight of who they really are as people. And what I do in my work focuses only on underserved, diverse populations. So when I come here, I'm always thinking, they're sort of a secret part of the island that most people don't see unless you live here. We do spend a lot of time here. We still don't live here full time. We spend lots of time here. So we're aware that there's this richness and cultural richness that is to be shared. And if you haven't, are those histories still available, Bill? If you haven't been to the NHA to view them, I'm sorry. Excellent. Okay, it's fascinating and wonderful, and they show what pride they have in being here. So they would certainly be, they'd be able to feel wanted, and that would be a great goal.
I've often thought about putting together some sort of an entity where there'd be a cultural visiting center for kids, young people. I think a bowling alley is big on the list, where once you see the diverse nature of our community come together to bowl, to play hockey. I mean, we have a hockey rink, that's great, but just a family-based cultural center. We have all these fine arts, we have all these historical entities that really bring in a whole lot of money to themselves. And if these families who are so diverse aren't interested in going to history or going to museums, they'd have a great cultural center to go to, learn about their world, and through a very fun, active way. And kids would have things to do in the winter.
So it's just at 5 o'clock, and I wanted to save a little bit of time for questions and then a little bit of time for some more refreshments. So does anybody have questions about the cultural district, how the process works, what it would mean to you in Nantucket? Any questions for me or anything about the Mass Cultural Council?
You mentioned how important leadership is. So how does an organization, nascent organization like this, figure out about its leader?
That's an excellent question. So that's a question that's been asked and answered 27 times so far here in Massachusetts. And I want you to know that, first of all, we require that in order for a community to have a cultural district designated, they must get the endorsement of their elected body, either a resolution by the city council or the town selectmen or whatever your form of government happens to be. Because we want to make sure that this isn't a one-off, that this is actually built into a city or town planning process, and it is embraced by your elected leadership, and it's really part of their planning. So that has to happen. But it doesn't mean that the city or town is the leader of the cultural district. So we've seen that leadership emerge in everything from the Main Street program to the Chamber of Commerce to the CVB to the local arts council to, actually in some cases it is attached to municipal government. They happen to have a cultural position within the city or town government. So it can take any shape or form. We had quite a few organizations this noon, some real exciting and vibrant opportunities, but that's a decision that the community makes, and what I recommend is that at the next meeting, as I mentioned, we had a lot of people sign up for the next meeting, that somebody just call the question, is there anybody who wants to step up and provide that kind of leadership? But there does need to be, as everybody knows, who's going to call the meeting? Who's going to send out the emails? It isn't that's the entity or the organization that makes all the decisions, but it's sort of the choir master, you know, the one that corrals everybody and gets everybody singing in tune and moving in the same direction. It's incredibly important, though, in addition to that leadership, that there's a real sense of co-authorship of the district. I heard so many passionate voices and stories today about what Nantucket means to you. And that really needs to be reflected in your plan and your planning around the district. Some of you have very specific and I think very laudable goals for the district. And those voices need to be heard, and those could be put into an action plan for the district. So the first step is really to create the partnership, identify the leader, and then start thinking about, okay, what do we want to accomplish with this district? We're not going to do it all the first day, but kind of lay it out in a planning process and develop a strategic plan around that. Other questions? Well, let me get the, Oh, yeah. Question? No? I'm curious. I have a question. So you're just getting acquainted with this idea. You've just come to this meeting today. So, you know, this isn't under contract and a lifelong decision. But how many think this might be something you'd be interested in learning more about and pursuing? That's good. That's great. So at this point, if there are no other questions, let's adjourn the formal part of the meeting. Cecil, or closing remarks?
Hi, everyone. Cecil Barron-Jensen. I'm the keeper of the lists. So if you are interested in being part of the planning team that puts this together, come find me in the back. And before we break, I have 3 quick thanks. The first is to the Athenaeum. It is such a pleasure to be in this room, and we're so grateful that you always say yes when we ask, so thank you. The second is to our dear friends at Remain. Thank you for bringing the nice treats that we have in the back for everyone to have. And finally, a big round of thanks and applause for Anita for being here and all that you've done.
I just want to emphasize, I go on a lot of these. I've been to all 370 of the 350 towns of Massachusetts. And I have really had such an amazing experience here the last couple of days. But the thing that really stands out for me is the level of participation that I've seen as we've, from the leadership of the organizations that have already stepped forward to organize this visit, to your participation today, that people that came out at noon today who are so caring and articulate about what Nantucket is to you and how you really want to be part of shaping and shepherding its future. So that is so commendable and so inspiring to me, and I want to thank you all for your time today. Thank you.
Good job.